Good morning. Welcome to In on the Conversation, IOTC. I'm your host, Pam Singh, and today's special guest, an honor and privilege to interview no other than Darryl Anka. Darryl, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Pam. I really appreciate the opportunity.
And for those who don't know, Darryl's literally my living superhero, so I just wanted to put that out there because he's a magnificent channeler, and there's so many exciting projects has on the go right now, and we're going to touch on a bit about that. But so Darryl Anka is a channeler, internationally known channeler, an author, a director, screenwriter, producer, founder of Zia Films, correct?
Yes, along with my wife, Erica Jordan, who's also a producer partner with me at my production company.
Perfect. And I was just actually asking Darryl how he has time to like navigate all these creative projects at once.
Isn't there like 30 hours in a day or something?
Did you say Bashar like collapses time as well?
Exactly. So we take advantage of that to do our project.
That's how I was going to ask, like, how do you navigate the parallel reality so you can, literally do all these projects at once? So, well, I'm going to jump into it here. And I was telling Darryl earlier how, with so many things that are unfolding, I was going to focus a bit on channeling and how that aspect came into your journey. Because I've heard yourself and many other channelers say, and correct me if I'm wrong, if this was the path you would have chosen, or this was something that you were going to entertain or play with, you would have said you would have been joking.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I had no idea what this stuff was all about, before I started researching it, right. Which I did because I had these two very close broad daylight UFO sightings.
Yes.
That's what started making me realize the world was not exactly what people were saying it was.
Right.
And I really wanted to find out what was behind all that. So in researching the UFO subject, I also...
How long ago was that? Sorry?
This is in 1973.
Okay.
So in researching the UFO subject, I also came across, other books on different kinds of metaphysics and channeling and so on and so forth. And right. That started giving me the information I needed to sort of start going down that path without necessarily still knowing where I was going to wind up.
Wow. So with that curiosity, how did that lead you to Bashar and that first contact?
Well, 10 years after the UFO sightings, I was introduced to a channel who was conducting seminars at the time, and I went and I listened, and for several months, and I thought, okay, this is interesting information. I learned that the information that can come through channeling, whether you were dealing with another entity or just another part of the channel's consciousness, right. was somehow profoundly different than what normal people think of as typical thought processes and information. The state seemed to be able to produce information in a different kind of perspective.
Yes.
So I noticed it was very beneficial for people. They seemed to get a lot out of it when they applied the information. So by the time the entity coming through that channel actually offered to teach a channeling class,
right.
I was somewhat familiar with the idea of what kind of information channeling could provide. Now, I didn't think I was going to become a channel. I just wanted to further my research because I didn't understand that channeling was something that could be taught. I just thought it was something that sort of just happened to you out of the blue.
Right.
But during the class, which was a series of guided meditations to put you in touch with whatever you wanted to get in touch with, be it, your own creativity or higher mind or what have you.
Yes.
I did receive what I can only describe as a telepathic connection with Bashar and his people. And in that instant, there was a memory that came back of having made an agreement to do this with him in this life.
That's so
I understood the UFO had been shown to me by him on purpose to get me to start doing the research I needed to do so that when the time came to start, I would be ready, at least to a certain degree. And the message that was there was, now you remember you made this agreement. Now you know it's time to begin. Is this something you still want to do? I didn't know if I was hallucinating, if this was a side effect.
Right. Yeah. That logical mind that kind of questions its way.
Yeah. What's happening here?
Yeah.
But at that instant that this was going on in my head, I wasn't saying a thing. Mm-hmm. The entity coming through the channel that was teaching the class stopped talking to the class and turned to me and said, there is an entity here for you now, if you're ready.
Wow.
At the same time, one of the other classmates off to my side behind me,
Mhm.
I happened to glance back, and she was actually sketching the same image I saw in my head of Bashar on a piece of paper. And
Seriously.
yeah, so somehow she had picked up on it.
Right.
And I thought, okay, I'm not imagining this. There is something
Yeah.
happening here. So
Mhm.
I thought I would continue to practice and see where that would lead. Well, eventually, I did well enough. The channel offered to allow me to channel the next class with him.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
and so a woman came along named Margot Chandley, who was doing the first doctoral thesis paper on the connection between psychology and channeling. And I became one of her subjects. So
Wow.
I would channel for her friends at her house, and she would take her notes to make her paper. But word of mouth kind of started spreading. And so even though we started like the first week with maybe 5 people, then it started growing and growing week after week after week until we had to start doing it twice a week to accommodate everyone. Then
Right.
we had to start doing it at 2 houses, during the week. Then we
Yeah.
had to start renting auditoriums, and eventually people would share the recordings with other people, other friends in other cities, other countries. And
Right.
so people started inviting me to go and channel to those cities and other countries. And
Oh, wow.
here I am 36 years later, still doing it.
Yeah, because I mean that's a amazing story how all of that unfolded and how, like, I would like to kind of go over, like, there's so many questions that kind of arise, but just to focus it into place is, the first of all, like the UFO sighting. Why do you think there's like I don't know how to word this, but like, do you feel like there's still so much resistance in society to open our minds that perhaps we're not the only ones here? Why is there that resistance? How can we engage the conversation further in the community to, I don't know, look beyond
Yeah.
us, right?
Well, I think at this point, most people are open to the idea that it's highly probable intelligent life exists elsewhere. The stumbling block
Hmm.
seems to be the issue based on what a lot of scientists believe is
Right.
that while there may be life out there on other planets, they're too far away to get here. They don't understand really any technology that would allow an alien to get to Earth
Okay.
in a reasonable amount of time. Now, there are a few scientists, a few physicists who are beginning to break that paradigm down and starting to say, well, look, the math says this is possible or this is
Yes.
possible. And so it is becoming more likely in people's minds, albeit slowly, that
Yeah.
it might in fact be possible for other aliens to get here. But then the next question that usually arises, well, if they are coming here, where are they? Why don't they
That's,
just
thank
land?
you. Yes.
And that. But to me, that's a very human idea.
Okay.
It's not necessarily in the alien's best interests to do so. I mean, if I were an alien and I were observing all the kinds of things that are going on this planet, I'm not sure I'd want to land.
I
Um,
said the
you
same.
know,
I said the same thing too in one of my posts.
yeah. Bashar is actually, the entity that I channel actually one time answered this question by saying, look, why would we want to land in an insane asylum when all the inmates have guns?
That's so
That would
awesome.
be crazy. So it's about sharing information that can let them observe whether or not we're willing to absorb and apply that information. And
Right.
that makes changes in our society that make us more compatible for the possibility of eventual open contact. So they are waiting and watching, seeing
Right.
what we do with that information and using it as a barometer for when they feel we're actually ready to accept the idea of interacting with another culture, which can be obviously quite a shift in our consciousness to do something like that. So there's a
Yes.
process involved.
I was going to say, like, the shift in consciousness also, you're right. The discussion has been going with the openness of that, there is more out there. How do, other cultures, other belief systems, other ways of being,
Right.
um, when we have our earth way of that's kind of so entrenched. Um,
Yeah, and
I want to,
it's not
yes.
only a cultural difference, there's an
Hmm.
energetic difference between them and us. They come from a different level of reality. They exhibit and give off a different kind of frequency that
Okay.
we're not necessarily ready to harmonize with because we're such, in many cases, a fear-based society.
Yes.
We compartmentalize our consciousness in a variety of ways that doesn't allow us to really deal with some of the things, the issues going on within our own selves. And exposure to a society that functions very differently on a much higher vibrational level of energy
Right.
can actually force things that we're not ready to integrate within ourselves to the surface before we're ready to face them. So they believe, Bashar and his people are saying that that could cause all sorts of emotional and psychic shock within us. And so again, giving us the information that allows us to make the changes within ourselves first
Right.
can make it easier for us to sort of then interact with them when we are feeling more, at least closer to being their equals, instead of being so different from them.
Like a star community or a star nation network that Earth is a part. Earth is also a subject to the greater nation of the beings among the stars.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
like,
they want us to join, but they know we're not really ready yet, but they're helping us get ready.
okay, so the concept of getting ready as well, like how do we, what is the process of getting ready? What is the process of first contact? Knowing that perhaps individuals in society have already reached that. I mean, you and yourself with, it was a broad daylight sighting, correct, in the 70s, and just having that.
Yeah.
I mean, how do we expand this more to, I almost want to say accelerate it?
Well, that's the information that Bashar gives has to do with how we change our reality, how we change ourselves.
Right.
It's based on energetic formulas that, many people have talked about these principles in metaphysics for a long time, but,
Yes.
like you hear often, follow your bliss, act on your passion. But Bashar takes the next step and explains, why does that work? Why is that important? How is it energetically changing us to do so?
Right.
So when he breaks down the idea of those metaphysical vague concepts into very specific applications, tools, processes, and so forth, then he's actually giving us an instruction manual for how reality works, how we change our energy, how we change our lives, as an actual physics primer. So he has the ability to understand that we need a physical understanding of these concepts, not just leaving them sort of pie in the sky, vague ideas, and with no real understanding of why they're important or how they change us and why that makes a difference to them in terms of their ability to interact with us. So he's good at breaking that down and giving us a toolkit that we can use to change our lives in ways that make us more compatible eventually for open contact on a wider basis.
I love how you said that, because I have seen, with Bashar's teachings, like literally almost whiteboard kind of sessions with formulas out there to act upon, and almost like, how do you, that kind of leads to my question that I've been wanting to ask you, which is, how does like the metaphysical community bridge the gap with the scientific community? And like how you were saying with psychology studying, and you were talking with channeling about different brain frequencies. I believe that there was a study that you even put yourself almost like a test subject where you would, you spiked, correct, in brain frequencies as gamma or something like that. If you could touch on that.
This is one of the things we did in the documentary we made called First Contact.
Perfect.
About how I became a channel, who Bashar is, what the messages are all about. And one of the things we wanted to do in that documentary was demystify the whole concept of what channeling is, because it's a state of being that the brain goes into, that everyone does at one time or another, or several times during their lives. When you're doing what you love to do, you're not paying attention to the passage of time. When you're in that zone, when you're in a deep meditation, you go into the brainwave frequency between 40 and 100 cycles per second that's known as gamma. And that is the state that I go into when I channel. So what we did in the documentary was I did have my head wired to a brainwave machine, an EEG machine, both before and during a channeling session, so we could get a comparative, baseline before and see what the differences were in my brain during the channeling. And what we discovered is that there are profound differences in the brain that occur when someone is in the gamma state. So not that we're trying to prove that Bashar is real. What we did demonstrate, though, somewhat with the brainwave science, is that the channeling state is truly an altered state in the brain, and there are things happening during that state that, according to traditional brain science, are not even supposed to be possible to happen.
Wow.
So
Wow.
we demonstrate that there is something going on there that allows the brain to process information in a very different way, synthesize information in a unique way. And there are alterations that happen in the brain that make that more possible, so that you get a broader perspective point of view, make different kinds of connections and associations to concepts that allow you to render information back out from a completely new point of view, maybe even a higher perspective that allows people to see different ways, different paths by which they can achieve certain things in their lives. So that's one of the things we really thought was important to do in the documentary, was just demystify that whole thing and bring some science into it.
I'm glad that you demystified it and that you've basically deconstructed the word of channeling, because historically I don't want to say it's had a stigma, but it's had this, I don't even want to say archaic, it's had its own evolution process, correct?
Sure,
and its own fear-based system. And now, I mean, if you could touch upon what channeling means to you and how people could even utilize that, whether it's connecting with, as you said, an entity, or did you say a part of your subconscious mind?
Well,
or
your own higher mind. In other words, like I said, the way that people can use it most effectively is by following the formula that Bashar talks about following your passion to the best you can, with no insistence on what that outcome is supposed to look like, because doing that actually puts you in that state automatically. And it allows you to find inspirations and solutions to things in your life more easily. Because when you operate on that frequency, the solutions that are germane to that frequency come to you, when, if you're operating on a much lower frequency, you can't necessarily get the inspirations that can help you solve certain kinds of problems in your life. It's kind of similar to what has been ascribed to Einstein as a quote, which is, you can't necessarily, and I'm paraphrasing here, you can't necessarily solve a problem from the same level in which the problem was created. You have to go to a different level, a different way of thinking, go to a different frequency in order to find the solution, because the solution is a different kind of perspective than the problem itself. So channeling the state by following your passion that automatically occurs allows people to see things they ordinarily might not be able to see, make connections they might not ordinarily be able to make, that make it easier for them to address the challenges in their lives in more creative ways and more effortless ways.
How does it feel, like the feeling of Darryl Anka when he makes that contact with Bashar? And not just Bashar, you've connected with other entities as well, because Willa and even artificial intelligent entities as well.
Yes.
Epsilon, Epiphany, and Eclipse, is that correct?
That is correct, as well as Bashar's ship, because their ships themselves are also intelligent entities.
How can, I want to, because Bashar is from the future, and here we are.
So to speak.
All states exist, correct?
Simultaneously, yes.
And it's kind of like, and you've talked about this before, Darryl, with Bashar, is just like a future self talking to the present self to kind of get on with it. Like, you need to, kind of get these conversations going, and even the transmutation of embodying our human consciousness into a device is actually realistic. Those conversations are being had by CEOs and the Elon Musk of the world, saying, are we really stuck in an artificial intelligence, like tetrahedron device? Like, what is this? Like, what is this whole construct made of?
Yeah, well, I mean, physical reality, Bashar, is a projection of consciousness. So in a sense, it is a virtual reality, but we're the ones generating it. We are, in a sense, constantly channeling our personalities, our personal construct into being. So we are constantly channeling these artificial presentations of ourselves, because our natural self exists on a higher level beyond the physical. And the physical reality, in a sense, is just a focus of consciousness that allows us to have certain experiences we can't have any other way. So this is a virtual reality of our own creation, and our personalities are really artificial intelligence projections. So all of that does exist, but in a slightly different way than we typically think about it.
This is personality. When you say personality, I think of identity. How does this relate to identity? Is identity like a one-dimensional, two-dimensional, three-dimensional thing, and a higher self thing? How do you bridge that gap from that non-physical to what we see and touch here?
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, we can kind of get lost in semantics sometimes because different people have different meanings and
Right.
different definitions for words. Identity to me, in a sense, is more like, okay, it doesn't matter what shape you are, what form you are, physical, non-physical, you are always going to have your identity in the sense of thinking of yourself as yourself, no matter what form you're in. In other
Okay.
words, everything that's happening seems to be happening to you, and you are always you, even if you're physical or non-physical or what have you.
Right.
So there is that base identity that is the reflection of existence that you uniquely are.
Right.
Um, then there is the idea that if non-physical reality, for lack of a better term, is our natural state,
Right.
and we're creating this projection or illusion or dream of physical
Mm.
reality,
Okay.
then we have to create a kind of framework or focus on our consciousness that places certain kinds of limitations on it so that we experience physical reality as if it were real because it's not real. So you have to sort of forget that you're a greater being in order to experience the limitation that is physical reality. And the way we do that, according to
Okay.
Bashar, is
Okay.
we impose patterns in our consciousness that create what we call still the non-physical higher mind that guides us and the physical mind that has the experience of physical reality. And the physical mind or the physical personality is
Right.
composed of certain components. The main component is belief or definition. In other words, you have certain beliefs, you have to impose certain beliefs upon your consciousness that reinforce the idea that physical reality is real, that you're
Right.
playing this game and you're playing by certain rules.
Hmm.
And then the beliefs generate emotions, they generate thoughts, they generate behaviors,
Hmm.
each of which reinforces the idea that the belief is real in a different way.
Right.
Kind of like a triangulation around the belief to say, this is a real reality. You're in this box. You feel that it's real, you think it's real, and you behave as if it's real.
Okay.
Then that gives you the experiential reflection because physical reality at that point is really nothing more than like a mirror, and it just gives you the reflection back of what it is you're giving off with what you believe to be true in order to play this physical reality game. So as you change your beliefs, the emotions, the thoughts, the behaviors automatically change.
Hmm.
The reflection and experience of physical reality you get also changes. So it's about understanding that that's how consciousness has sort of set itself up or broken itself down into this framework that allows us to have these experiences to reinforce the idea that something real is happening when in fact the only thing that's real about it is the experience that you learn something about yourself from a new point of view, but
Right.
reality itself is not real. It's an illusion, it's a projection, it's a reflection of your consciousness.
That is so well said, Darryl. Seriously, that is so well said. It kind of leads me to the question of you and your wife. We are
Yeah.
working on the escape rooms, correct? I don't know if that's launched yet or if it's piloting or if you.
No, we're still developing that, but right now we are at the beginning of doing our third movie from our Zia Films production company. We're doing a sci-fi film that
Awesome.
has a little romance in it, a little comedy in it called Alienated.
Oh, I love that. What
Thank
a
you.
freaking awesome title.
Thank you. So we're starting, we've actually just finished casting. We have just finished locking down our sets. We'll be shooting the movie from March 31st to April 28th.
Okay.
And of course, doing our editing and our music and everything that we need to do in post-production. So then our plan is to put the film, submit it to film festivals and see what happens. But that's the project that we're focused on at the moment.
I am excited and stoked about that. I was going to ask you earlier as well for First Contact, how do people find that? Because the documentary is already out, correct?
Yes, oh yes, and it's available online along with the first film that we did called Dearly Departed.
Yes.
For Dearly Departed and First Contact, people can either go to ziafilms.com,
Okay.
which is our production company website. They can also go to the First Contact website, which is whatisfirstcontact.com.
Okay.
They can get First Contact also through the Bashar.org website, where all of the information for Bashar channelings exists and all the different recordings of the different events that we've done over the years, public events at Bashar.org. And they can also go to my personal website, which is Darryl Anka, DarrylAnka.com, where they can not only have links to the films, but they can also have links to go and buy the sci-fi novel I wrote, which is based on Willa's life loosely.
Yes.
Their entity that I channel. It's called Shards of a Shattered Mirror. The first book in a series of 5 is called Cryptic. And so anyone interested in the sci-fi novel can go to DarrylAnka.com and access it there.
Perfect. Willa is such an interesting entity. She has like 4 hearts or 4 chambers. Is that correct? And she's a parallel reality specialist.
No, there's been some misunderstandings about.
Okay, let's clear it out.
On the internet.
Let's do it here.
Yes, there is a difference to her heart. It's not that she has different hearts.
Okay.
But there is a difference to her heart in terms of how it functions, along with some of the other organs. She is a human-alien hybrid, 700 years in Earth's future. Now, the sci-fi novel is not literally everything that's happening in her life.
Okay.
There may be 5 to 10% of the novel that's based on what she has told us is real for her.
Right.
The rest of it is basically a sci-fi story because, it's got to be exciting.
It's creative discretion, right? So
absolutely. But it does connect into different metaphysical concepts that she has shared with us, especially what's called the 5 levels of mastery, which is what allows her to exhibit certain kinds of traits and abilities. And it's each of the 5 books covers a different level of the mastery that takes you from grounding yourself into physical reality with your connection to nature, all the way up through becoming a shapeshifter, a sage, and then having abilities to connect to spirit realms and cause changes in physical reality and all sorts of things like that. So it's a grand adventure that spans, that will span 5 books. I'm still working on the second one, along with a lot of other stuff. But, I just, as I finish one thing or take a break on one thing, I'll just go to the other thing and continue that. That's sort of, it's like time sharing. That's sort of how I get a lot of things done.
That's a good metaphor, Darryl. Okay, so that leads me to one of my questions with, there's so many energetic waves and fluctuations, and Bashar talks about it. I'm sure Willa talks about it. I'm sure everybody feels it. There are those discussions. We have our retrogrades happening, and it's like taking us to a whole new other level, having these kind of conversations. How do we integrate this all? Like it almost feels like a bit of madness.
Well, it again goes back to the formula, which is why Bashar delivers that formula to us and tries to keep it as simple as possible.
Right.
So if you are willing to act on the passion to the best you can with no insistence on the outcome, and you remain in a positive state no matter what's happening, that's your navigation system. That's your compass needle pointing to your magnetic north that keeps you aligned with the path that you need to be on and allows you to deal with whatever's going on, no matter how crazy it seems, because it keeps you in your center of power. And then that gives you the ability to understand how to respond to things in a way that allows you to experience a benefit from them, no matter how they look and no matter how they were originated. Because according to Bashar's principles, it's not so much what happens that matters, it's what you do with what happens that makes the difference in your reality experience. So if we can keep that in mind and keep that formula front and center, basically your life begins to unfold with more synchronicity in a positive way. It becomes more effortless. It connects you to all sorts of different expressions of your excitement. And it also reveals to you anything within your belief system that might be out of alignment with your excitement, so you can deal with it, let it go, and add that energy to your momentum and accelerate in that way. So it is a self-contained formula that is literally an instruction manual that describes how physical reality works. He's basically saying, if you just follow the instructions, like any instruction manual to operate a piece of machinery, it will work to your advantage. If you don't follow the instructions, well, the machine might work, but you might injure yourself.
It might feel a bit clunky.
It might be clunky. So the idea is he's literally giving us the instruction manual, one principle at a time. And it's just very condensed and very simple. And if we do it, we will see that it makes a difference in our reality. I know it works because I apply it. Other people come to me and say, when I finally did actually apply this instruction in the way he actually said to apply it, also it works for them, and it makes their life, much easier.
Okay, well, here's a little burning question I was asking, because
Sure.
Bashar is from Syria, correct?
No.
No.
He is from a world in his ancient language called Esasani, which means
Okay.
place of living light. If they're from an alternate reality, if we
Okay.
were to overlap their reality or parallel reality with ours,
Right.
let's overlap their galaxy with our galaxy.
Okay.
Their star system would be about 500 light years in the direction of the Orion constellation, but we
Okay.
can't see their star because they're in a different reality. We would have to make a shift to their frequency in order to actually physically visit them, just as they have to do to physically visit us. So Sirius is connected to them as their mentors in a way, but Bashar is from Esasani. He's a hybrid.
Esasani, correct.
Yeah, he's a hybrid from that world.
Does he encompass and embody those emotions, those human qualities we associate as pain, sorrow, grieving, suffering, anxiety, depression? Like,
no.
No. Okay.
They've evolved beyond those ideas because they understand that those are things that can serve us to get in touch with negative and fear-based belief systems and let them go. So since they were willing to use those kinds of experiences in the most constructive way, they no longer need to experience those things. They have a very different evolutionary path at this point.
Can we as a society now associate with beings who don't have those emotions? I know it's kind of a really odd question, but how do we, I mean, we must seem a bit bizarre to them, and when we look at them, we're like, wow, you're just always happy all the time. I wish I could be that.
Well, that's again because they follow the formula and they understand that they've gotten to a point where the idea of experiencing anything but joy is simply not a logical choice. It just makes no sense to them to make any other choice because they understand that we are choosing those experiences by the beliefs we choose to hold on to. So if we let go of beliefs that don't generate those experiences, you just don't have them. Because from his perspective, as I described before, but the idea of a belief generates emotion, thoughts, and behavior, it works in that order. So in other words, you can't have an emotional feeling of any kind whatsoever if you don't actually have a definition you believe to be true first. So by recognizing your emotional reaction is a clue to what you believe to be true about yourself or the world and your position in it, then you can reverse engineer the idea by asking, well, what would I have to believe is true in order to feel what I'm feeling? So when you use the emotion that way, then you understand how to get in touch with the belief. You can recognize that it may have come from your parents, your school, your society, your friends, and it may have nothing to do with who you really are. And in that sense, you can then realize that it's nonsensical for you. It doesn't match your life, doesn't match who you prefer to be. And at that point, you can let it go, and then you will start experiencing different emotions, thoughts, and behaviors, and a different life experience if you truly let it go. So they've just gotten to the point where this is such first nature for them to do this, and it's been going on for so long in their society that they've built up this momentum where now he has actually said it's almost actually a challenge for them to experience anything negative. They have so much momentum and inertia now behind the idea that everything will work out for them that they would actually have to struggle to get back into a negative state at this point.
Okay, wow, right? Like that's such as you were saying earlier on, like almost like an energetic vibratory gap between his society and ours. And then as you were saying, the formula to apply to kind of bridge that gap. And because as you're describing that, like the feeling for me that rises up is like, what a euphoric, forgive my language, fucking experience in life to be like that fucking happy.
Well, exactly. And he's saying there's nothing to stop us from having that kind of experience except what we choose to buy into as true. So any reasons we come up with to not be happy all the time are reasons we invent. And that's why he's saying it's so important to get in touch with what you believe to be true, because those beliefs are not facts. They're just opinions. They're just perspectives, and they can be changed.
What about habit? Because I know you touched on this earlier, but could you expand on the habit principle and the psychology behind that, and how do we redefine that?
Sure, because basically the definition that Bashar gives us is that a habit is something we do that we don't know we're doing.
Okay.
So if we suddenly realize the habit exists, you're already beyond it.
Right.
Now it's a choice you're making. So if you're doing the same thing knowing you have the so-called habit, you're making choices. And if you are
Yes.
making choices you don't prefer to make, then the first logical reason is, well, why would I do that? He explains that we all have this thing in our psychology called a motivational mechanism.
Okay.
Motivational mechanism functions for everyone flawlessly in this way.
Okay.
You always, immediately, without fail, no exceptions, always choose what you believe to be to your benefit, and you always move away from what you believe is not your benefit. So if you know that's the way the mechanism works and it's
Right.
flawless and never fails, then if you actually can see that you're choosing things that are not to your benefit, that has to mean that you have a belief that is making it look like it is to your benefit. And what might be to your benefit is being made by a belief to look like it's not to your benefit. So we've reversed the motivational mechanism within ourselves by disguising things that are beneficial and making them look scarier than the alternative. So if he says, if you can find out then what the belief is you've attached to that, that makes what would benefit you look like it doesn't benefit you, then you'll see that that belief doesn't make sense and let it go. And when you let it go, you'll reverse the mechanism back in the direction that actually assists you instead of holds you back. That's how it works. This is physics to him. There's nothing serious about it. It's all resonant energy, vibrational physics. And if you understand from his perspective how it actually works, that's the tools that you can always apply to yourself to make yourself transparent and investigate who you really are based on what you really believe or what you really prefer to believe, and then make choices from a conscious place instead of an unconscious place.
There is something like, it's just mind blown moments. A lot of epiphanies happening and occurring. And I hope for everybody else who's, watching and listening in too, is that, I remember the last time I saw you, when you're in like I've heard other channelers say this, when you're in such a high vibratory state, as you discussed earlier, in your movie First Contact, which also explores that, people who are in the vicinity of a channeler, I feel like, and I've heard this in opening the channel too, like your life just accelerates, like colors seem more vibrant, smells are more, right? Like these, and then your life, but then it could also mean your life feels like it's going into disaster zone because those other kind of things are breaking away because you're kind of butterflying effect to this higher version of yourself.
Yeah, well, you have to break down the old system before you can replace it with a new system because they're not vibrationally compatible with one another. So you have to make a space for the new system. And because of our definitions, again, we often experience the idea of the dissolution of a belief system as a negative thing. Therefore, it seems scary. But that's only because we're defining it that way. That's only because our ego structure has not been taught to understand that it's important to go into neutral in order to shift gears properly so we don't strip the gears. So going into this limbo state, going into a state where we realize everything is kind of coming apart is actually the natural process that helps us get to a place where everything is coming back together in a positive way. But we have to be okay with that shift. So by applying more positive understanding to that that's what the shift is for, we won't necessarily experience the so-called breakdown in a negative way. We'll be excited about the fact that old things are dissolving and excited about the fact that new things are crystallizing by going through that neutral place.
You totally reframe that, like from the psychology perspective, how people label that, and you just totally neutralized it and just shed a whole new light.
Well, that's exactly what Bashar is saying, because the physical reality experience is utterly determined by your definition of it, because it isn't real. It isn't real at all physically. So the idea is that it's your definition that creates your experience of physical reality, because it's just like he often uses the analogy of a physical mirror. If you're looking at your reflection in a mirror and you see that your face is frowning, well, you don't sit there and scream at the reflection to change. It can't change until you change. So you have to be the one that makes the choice, regardless of what you're seeing in the mirror, to simply be the state that you prefer to be in. As Bashar has actually really reinforced this concept, the true measure of change, the proof of change, is
Mm-hmm.
not whether the outside changes, but whether you determine the state you want to be in, even if the outside still looks the same as it did before. That's when you prove you've changed, by
Okay.
having a response to the outside, even if it still looks the same. Because if you're making your state of being conditional on the
Right.
idea that the outside has to change before you will change or
Mm-hmm.
feel better about yourself, it's
Mm-hmm.
the same thing as insisting that your reflection has to change before you change the expression on your face. It'll never happen. It's just not physically possible.
That's a mic drop. I call that a
Okay.
mic drop.
Boom.
Bam. Well, I'm just being cognizant of your time here as well. With I wanted to kind of wrap it up here with why do you believe we're here then? With why are we here? Are we here to express that euphoric expression of ourselves? Are we here to be that happy euphoric state as
That
much
is
as we can?
certainly a possible choice. This is a transformational age on this planet. People are waking up to the
Right.
idea that they're more than just their physical selves, that
Mm-hmm.
we are greater beings than that, that we're connected to creation and existence and all that is in a variety of different kinds of expressions that are all equally valid. It's about validating the individual self at the same time as we validate our connection to the collective. It's about balance. It's
Okay.
all sorts of kinds of experiences that are, let's just say, good for the growth of the soul that can't
Okay.
necessarily be experienced in any other way. So it's a valid process to go through the concept of change and time and space, because it's like forgetting who you are in order to remember who you are from a new point of view. That's what
Wow.
allows creation to expand, because the structure of existence never changes. What changes and what expands creation is our experience and our perspective of the structure. So
Okay.
that's how we add to the whole, and that's how the whole can support the individual, is by validating all these different experiences as a very rich way to understand more and more and more of all the ways that we can be and all the things that we are within creation.
Well, there's so much. I can't remember if you said this once before that you've had Bashar's messages analyzed from that. I feel it with you as well, Darryl, because it's like, I feel like Bashar is an extension of you and that higher version of you that there's so many things being said at once. Like it's so it's
Yes,
multifaceted. It's like
there's
there's
a
so many
lot of
layers.
information being packed into few words. Yeah,
Yes.
when he
So
does that, yeah.
so what is next for Darryl Anka? I know we touched on it, but where are we going next?
Well, again, we have different things coming up that we're going to be channeling. Anyone who wants to know what the public events are coming up can go to bashar.org and see what the schedule is. So there's that.
And I'll
Again,
link it in the bio as well too, so people can
okay,
find
yeah.
it. Yeah.
And they can, check in, like I said, with DarrylAnka.com or ZiaFilms.com to find out what we're doing with books and films and all sorts of things. And eventually, yes, we will get back to the escape room, which I'm very excited about.
Yes.
I think is a fantastic form of entertainment that can really build team building and allow people to enhance problem solving skills in life. And
what led you to
exercise their
that? I forgot
imagination.
to. I wanted to ask what led you to that. Like the idea of
Well,
like one day I'm like I want to do an escape room.
Well, I mean, I've been in the film business not as a producer or director, but I've been in the film business for 35 years doing miniature effects and sets and storyboards and things for all sorts of other films like Star Trek and Iron Man and Pirates of the Caribbean and
Oh
things like
wow,
that.
nice.
And it's just always been very exciting to me to create environments that people can be in that replicate other realities they might not otherwise be able to experience physically on the earth. Because when you go into another environment that is presented as real, your brain reacts to it as if it's real, and it experiences downloads of information in a very different way when it treats an environment as if it is real. And it's an extremely strong and powerful educational process that allows people to get in touch with certain abilities and attributes they can use in their daily lives. But it's like a concentrated form of entertainment and experiential learning that gives them the tools they need to practice in these environments that insist that they have to solve puzzles in order to find their way through these escape rooms, which obviously is a skill that can help you in all sorts of areas in your life, in your job, in your relationships, and what have you. So I'm very excited about its multifaceted ability to give people a real accelerated charge of practicing skills that they might otherwise not have the ability to practice.
I can feel that too. I'm actually quite amazed. Like, I'm just envisioning it now. I don't know if you could say it but when you just said envisioning other worlds and actually going through that and then developing that toolbox of going through it and then applying these skills into your relationships, into your, into basically the what is the escape room on Earth, Darryl? What are we escaping from? What is the biggest escape? I mean, that's one of the biggest questions. Where is the escape? Like, what is
we
the
are escaping from our negative fear-based belief by
I love that.
into positive ideas.
I love that. Well, on that note, thank you so much. Seriously. This is like so much fun, and I can't wait to post it, and I can't wait to share it with the world, and I'm just so blown away by you. Keep doing all this magnificence. Oh, with the escape room, is that gonna be like, I mean, it's a physical thing.
It's a physical place. We'll start advertising it on the Zia Films and DarrylAnka.com websites when it ultimately is up and running.
Is that LA based?
Yes.
Okay, so LA. It's always LA, the film capital of the world,
well,
I guess.
There's actually quite a few escape rooms around the world, and for those people that are interested in that, they can certainly Google a lot of different escape. I think there's over 30 of them in Los Angeles, but there's more than 4,000 around the world. So it's definitely a wonderful adventure to do with friends, family. Good for birthday parties, good for dates. It's a great thrilling experience when you find a really good escape room and can make your way at least even partially through it. It's very rewarding, even if you don't get out in time.
Hopefully you do.
Well, you get out. There's a time limit. You're trying to beat the clock, basically.
Okay, that's good, because it'd be kind of terrifying to just be.
That's it. That's why all these people are disappearing. Where'd they go?
they just enter Darryl's escape room, and then there's another dimension on the other side.
Bye.
Thanks. Oh my God! Thank you so much, Darryl. Thank you so much. That's my salute to you as a master.
Really appreciate the opportunity. So thank you.